welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm really excited to be here as your host, and we have a really exciting guest with us today. Our issue is substance abuse, and the topic is adolescence and substance abuse, and our guest is Constance Phillips, admissions manager with Odyssey House. Constance, we're so glad you're back, as you've been on the show before.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And Odyssey House is an amazing place where adolescents that are battling substance abuse can come and their lives can be completely changed. So I'm excited that we get to talk about that today.
Yes, so much.
I have a question here that maybe a lot of people off the top of their head would not be able to answer. What is the most prevalent drug or drugs that are used by adolescents?
Well, by far, marijuana is the drug that's used most prevalently among adolescents. We've seen an increase in the use of spice, and I don't know if you've heard of spice, but it's a synthetic marijuana. It looks a lot like potpourri. A lot of the kids are using that now, which is creating a lot of medical issues among them. If you've heard in the news lately, several high schools have had issues with kids, multiple kids, going to the hospital because of the symptoms that they've displayed after taking it. So for a long time, marijuana has been the drug that's most used among high school students. However, we have seen an increase in spice use.
And what are some of those symptoms that are driving kids to the hospital, to their doctors?
A lot of those kids are reporting nosebleeds, headaches, stomach aches, different issues like that, paranoia, hallucinations, and so very concerning medical issues in which they're having to be taken to the emergency room.
Wow. So is this something that the teens are trying to hide and the parents just catch them and take them to the hospital, or are they just trying to go and get help on their own?
Well, what's happening is they're using it at school. And so since they're using it at school, what happens is sometime during the day they start to exhibit these symptoms. And so administrators get concerned and they're having to take them to the hospital. So a lot of times they're using it at school where a lot of people are around and can see the difference in their behaviors and the symptoms that they're having so that they can get them the medical care that they need.
Now, since these are, of course, illegal substances and they end up in the hospital for treatment,
Correct.
What's the next step for kids that are caught in this situation?
Well, it depends because, of course, you're dealing with people who may not be educated in this area, and they may be. So the ones who are educated in this area, they may contact CPS. They may place a report to CPS so that the family then is investigated as to how is this child getting this drug. Why are they not being supervised, and those types of issues. So it depends, and sometimes the kid may be on probation, so it's reported to their probation officer. So any number of things that can happen once it is found that the kid is using.
So once this process kind of gets started, where does Odyssey House come in? At what part of the process will they be aware of Odyssey House?
Well, Odyssey House is utilized a lot by probation. We do have referrals from CPS. We have just volunteers that come in that have found our information on our website. And then we have probation who utilizes it. It's probably a large portion of our kids come from probation, whether it's Jefferson County or any other county, but they're utilizing our services. Then we have family members who've been through our program before. Odyssey House has been around for a long time, so we have some parents who've been through the program and know about our agency, and so they refer their children.
Now, you mentioned children, and we talked about Odyssey House serves adolescents, so ages 13 to 18, roughly.
That is correct.
What is the age that kids are first exposed to drugs like marijuana that you brought up?
Right. Well, it depends, because if the family is using, then it could mean that the kid is a third, fourth generation marijuana user. Their grandparents could have used it, their parents. So it really depends. They're exposed to it at a young age. It's very easy to get. Their friends are using it, their older siblings. So a lot of times it is the people that are around them that start them to using.
So it can be really any age depending on their family situation.
Correct. And the younger they start using, the more inclined they are to become addicted to that drug.
Right, and the more, of course, those symptoms over time, they're going to probably compound if they have that buildup in their system of those different drugs.
Because they build up a tolerance. And so initially they may use a little bit of the drug, but as time goes on, they need to use more of that drug in order to feel that same high, which then leads them to using other drugs. For instance, I mentioned spice earlier. A lot of times that's why they start using, because they need a bigger punch. They want to use or get a bigger high, that's high that they're not getting anymore, and so they try different drugs at that point.
And this can happen as early as 13?
Absolutely. 12, 13, even younger than that. I've had some kids report to me they started using at 8 and 9 years old.
8 and 9 years old.
Yes.
I have a son who's 8, and it just breaks my heart to know that they're dealing with this peer pressure at such a young age.
Right.
And as a parent, it makes me think, we need to be watching out for our teens, the teens in our community, even those who aren't parents. We have teenagers in our neighborhood, and we might be able to look at some of those symptoms and offer some help, like through programs like Odyssey House.
Right.
You mentioned marijuana and spice. What are some of those drugs that are really easy for teens to access?
Well, other drugs that are easy for the teens to access are going to be your prescription drugs, because a lot of times they're either in the home or a doctor has prescribed it to that child to use. So you see the use of Ritalin or the use of Xanax, those types of things that they've been prescribed. So they'll start abusing those drugs. They're easy to get, or their friends are taking those drugs, and so they can get those from their friends. Then you have inhalants, which are aerosols. Those are things they can find in the home. And so hairspray, different things like that, Freon, they're able to abuse those because it's very convenient for them to get.
So those are the ones that are the easiest to access, and we're not even talking about, those are kind of like what they're called the gateway drugs.
Correct.
Because once you start here, you're going to want what you were mentioning, the bigger high, or more intense experience.
Right.
So once they're caught in the cycle, it's kind of hard to break. But once they come into Odyssey House, these adolescents, maybe through their probation officer, they're saying you have no choice.
Right.
You have to go through this program, or there's these consequences.
Correct.
Once they go through the program, what are some of the changes that they start to experience?
Well, a lot of kids will begin to think more clearly. They'll be able to make better decisions. A lot of kids have anger issues. So we teach them to stop and think, to get control of their impulses, so that way, because that is what leads them to using the drugs. I don't know how to deal with this feeling or this emotion, and so they'll start using. Some are self-medicating because they have ADHD that's undiagnosed, or they do have anger issues, and it may be bipolar or some other diagnosis, and so they'll start using because it helps them to feel calm.
Right. So once they start this treatment and they start going through that process of stop and think, maybe going through some withdrawal issues where they're having all those physical symptoms, what are some of the barriers that they encounter to the treatment? Because it's more difficult than I could ever imagine. Right.
Some barriers may be family. They may have a family that's enabling. They may come from a single parent home, so they don't have support. Their parents may be working, and so they can't be involved in their treatment. And so that becomes hard for the child to be successful in the program, because they need that family support. We need to be able to treat the whole family as opposed to the individual, because that adolescent is going to go back into the same home that they came from. So if we're not able to treat the family as a whole, then the child is going to go right back into the same dysfunctional type setting that they came from.
Right. And even if they have the tools, it's still hard going back to the same situation to fight almost against their own family to get out of that.
Right.
Especially if they're younger.
Absolutely. And the neighborhood they live in. They may live in a neighborhood where drugs are prevalent, negative peers that are wanting them to engage in behaviors that aren't positive.
Right.
And so they have a lot of barriers to deal with because it's easier for adults to get treatment and to be successful and to get the tools that they need afterwards, such as aftercare and outpatient. For an adolescent, it's a lot tougher because they have to rely on their family, their parents, to get them to those resources after they're done with their treatment.
So for teens that are older, they might have a little bit more of a knowledge of, I can maybe call a few relatives, or I can talk to my probation officer. For those who are younger, maybe they don't feel empowered to do that. Right. So I guess that's where the family would come in.
Absolutely.
But Odyssey House is there to help these teenagers that are dealing with substance abuse to have hope.
Absolutely. It's a place for change. And so that's what we instill in the kids. This is a place where you can change. We want you to be able to make changes while you're in treatment, so that way you can use the tools after treatment.
Right.
So we encourage them to open up, to be honest, and deal with the issues that they feel like they have while they're in treatment.
That's amazing. So we're coming to the end of our show, but do you have a really powerful testimonial of someone who, one of your teenagers at Odyssey House that maybe you know, while they came in, their life was just a mess, and when they were done with Odyssey House, something happened?
Right. Well, I have several, but the one that comes to mind is a teenager who came in and just really didn't want to be there. My initial meeting with this adolescent was less than pleasant, and he didn't want to be there. He really didn't want to engage, didn't feel like there was a problem, and you could just see the change during the process. And by the end of his treatment, he became one of our leaders in the community, and he had a very powerful influence over his peers. So he was able to instill what he had learned in others to help them make the same change that he did.
That's exciting to hear what is happening at Odyssey House. Constance Phillips, our special guest today, admissions manager at Odyssey House. They're located at 5629 Grapevine Street, Houston, Texas, 77085. If you want to contact Constance at Odyssey House, it's 713-726-0922. And you can just punch in extension 5910, or you can visit their website and get all of this information and more. It's www.senacor.org. That's www.cenikor.org. And Constance, thank you so much for being with us on Joy in Our Town and sharing what Odyssey House is doing to change teens' lives.
Yes.
Because we know substance abuse it's really tough to break.
Yes.
But you guys are doing an amazing job helping that and helping change Houston for the better.
Yes. Thank you, Capelia. I appreciate your having me.
Thank you so much. And thank you for watching Joy in Our Town. We'll be right back.